Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your off-season edition of the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion, Take 2. The first one cut off 75% of the way, and I have no idea why. So I'm back again. I'll go over things fairly quickly this time because it's hard to do the same thing twice in a row, especially when I think the last one was pretty good quality. Oh well, let's get right to it. So basically what I was showing, the SOI going down, we lost about half of where we were in March. And if we look at the graphical representation of this, we can see that this dip has been fairly persistent here over the last several days. And as this continues, the entire base state of the Pacific is changing. The equatorial region through here in the deep tropics changing via the pressure pattern overall on a very large scale, as well as the sea surface temperature configuration, leaning more towards a neutral signal, definitely not screaming towards any kind of a warm event or what we call an El Nino or a warm episode of the ENSO, which is ENSO or El Nino Southern Oscillation. Basically all of this just fancy ways of saying we're changing things. Not we, but the Earth is changing things, and we are observing those changes more towards a neutral state. In the Atlantic basin, much colder than average over here in the eastern Atlantic, extending out into parts of the deep tropics. If we compare that to last year at this time, look at that. There you go. Very, very warm in the deep tropics. A big signal to last year's hurricane season, I think, even though a lot of people were kind of leery about predicting a big season. You just never know what's going to happen, right? I mean, the same thing happens with sports. You think some team is going to have a great year, lots and lots of accolades for the talent on the team. It could be football, basketball, baseball, doesn't matter. And they end up falling short. Or you have a team that surprises everybody. You just never know. Sports and hurricanes once again. Well, last year the signal was very strong here in the Atlantic. And in the Pacific, we were just starting to see the beginnings of the La Nina at this time last year, starting to show up at the surface. And at the subsurface, it was actually a much different story. It was an even stronger signal. But comparing to this year, probably not going to see as busy a hurricane season in terms of overall numbers and intensities. But that doesn't mean we won't have big impacts somewhere. And as I was talking about in my last update that went awry from earlier today, we could get these tropical waves coming off, and maybe they don't develop out here, but they develop farther to the west and north, somewhere around here, or they don't develop at all. That could be a possibility as well, and we have a very down season. It's just very difficult to tell because we are not, and this shows this very well, despite this large warm pool in here, we are not running full tilt towards a strong El Nino event. And as such, the Pacific is not going to overwhelm the Atlantic in terms of its overall warmth. This is not, this is going to take a while to warm up, and nothing like 2015 levels when we had the very strong El Nino. And this has plenty of time to recover by the time we get to August. It's just how things look now. And there are some people talking out in social media, and these are smart people. I'm just saying there is beginning to appear to be some talk that this season will not be as active as last season, maybe even by a pretty wide margin. So let's keep an eye on that. But we also need to remember that the overall numbers sometimes don't matter, because what my job is and what I want to make sure we focus on, we want to keep track of that one hurricane or that one tropical storm or even depression that comes to you and affects you. Well, that's what we need to be on the lookout for, no matter where you live, okay? And so we'll look at the bigger picture for the overall numbers, but I'm not as concerned about that as I am the impacts. And that makes the most sense, right? Because in the end, you could have all the hurricanes form out in the open Atlantic, and if they don't affect land areas outside of shipping interests, they're just something to watch on satellite. But when they impact land, tropical storms included, all the rainfall they bring, that's the impacts that we need to be waiting for. All right, so let's move on to lower 48 weather quickly here. And for those of you that saw the first version of this, and I'm actually going to leave it on Why not? I'm not going to delete it. You saw all of the rest of the stuff that I did in more detail. So let's just keep moving so I can get to the end here, because that's what seems to have been chopped off. High fire risk out here, again, as the pattern is changing, drier, low humidity weather, strong winds, so please be careful. This area is going to set up for severe weather over the next few days, but by and large, the lower 48, not too much in the way of storminess at the moment. The convective outlooks here getting to be that time of year into May, but it's probably still going to be below normal, believe it or not. But nevertheless, the next few days, today's outlook, some severe weather from Texas extending many hundreds of miles north from there all the way up into parts of North Dakota and Minnesota. If we advance this forward to day 2, a little bit more of a concentration here in the heart of Tornado Alley, if you will, and then by day 3, even more so, Kansas, Oklahoma, and parts of extreme southeast Nebraska. Now, these will change over time. The point is, it's time to be aware, and that is your best defense with this severe weather season upon us, the spring severe season, and it goes for hurricanes too, but at least we have days and, at least a day of warning. Even the shortest fuse storms close to land give us warning. The tornadoes and severe weather, big hail events, you might only have hours and minutes of warning, and so your best defense is to be aware ahead of time, and in today's busy lives and so forth and so on, it might be harder and harder to do that. So I'm just pointing this out to you. I did mention in the other video, the one that foobarred, and I'm going to mention it again. It's going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot of chasers out in this region for sure over the next several days, and I think it would be interesting to put some cameras out there one day. It's a matter of funding, not desire. I would love to do it, but it costs money. I'd probably have to drive from Wilmington here. Whoops. Make sure I didn't turn the video off. I would have to drive from Wilmington. I really wouldn't want to airline everything and head out here and set some things up. We'll talk about that another time. It's probably something I have to try for next year. But anyway, going to be a lot of storm chasers out there, and too many for my taste, crowded, and I have an idea that I'd like to try one day. We'll just leave it at that. Looking at the GFS here off of Levi Cowan's site, Tropical Tidbits, I'm going to put this into motion. I want you to watch, though, down in this area, the northern leewards, the northeast corner of the Caribbean, through Puerto Rico and Hispaniola. Watch what happens here over the next few days. Some energy is going to come in out of the tropics, an increase in moisture, maybe some heavy rain and some squally weather as this broad area of low pressure starts to take shape and then just kind of hang out in the southeast Bahamas, up to the northern Bahamas. Some people are going to talk about this as a sign of the upcoming hurricane season. It may or may not be. That doesn't really matter in my opinion. What matters is a lot of rainfall could be coming, for that area. Come on, down through here. And so I want you to be aware of that. In fact, let's scroll back up so I can get the slider that Levi has provided. It really gets going at about day 3 and 4, right through here. So yeah, you folks down there that are still recovering from Irma and Maria and even Jose, the hurricanes of 2017, we shall call them. Heavy rain possible over the next few days. So be aware of that, all right? In whatever manner you can be. And in some cases, celebrate it. You might need the rainfall, that fresh water, collect it, store it for future use. That's what they do when you're surrounded by ocean. They have these big cisterns in a lot of these tropical islands, and they collect the rain off the roofs, etc., and they store it in underground cisterns for later use. So get ready, it's coming. But nothing major. And then anybody talking about, oh, this is a sign of the hurricane season ahead, I don't think so, but whatever. All right, speaking of last year, the DVD is going to be ready on Friday, and I started taking orders for this. Of course, I put parts 1 and 2 on YouTube, free of charge, but the director's cut with a few more scenes added. It's a 2-disc set. The director's cut is on disc 1. It's going to be over 2.5 hours, extended version of it with a few more scenes and other things added. Nothing dramatically different, but enough so. And then disc 2 will have bonus features, including some really cool aerial video that I took last year in the desert Southwest that I put to some music. just kind of showing a different side of what I like to do. And then some really neat time-lapse movies where you can watch all of them over the years. I'm going to go all the way back to like 2003 and then string together a bunch of time-lapse movies together. So get out the popcorn, watch the time-lapse, and some other cool featurettes, a few of them to make the bonus disc worthwhile as well. If you want to order, it'll support what I'm doing. I appreciate it very much. And, we're getting ready for this season, so we got to acquire the funding. I'm not sitting on $1 million in some bank account somewhere, just draining it, going out and doing hurricane work. This is what I do for a living, and so every bit adds up. You can buy it off of PayPal. We have the PayPal set up. $30 plus shipping for a 2-disc set to own a piece of history. I would certainly appreciate it, and I think you're really going to like it. And I'll autograph each one of them for you for whatever that's worth. And some people, hey, that'll be pretty cool. I just do what I do, and it's cool to be able to sit here and do this with you guys on the other end watching. So very good. Hopefully this video recorded everything. And like I said, I'm going to leave the other one on. Whatever. No sweat. So that's it. A little abbreviated version. Hopefully we got the end this time. I am Mark Sudduth, still Mark Sudduth, even though I didn't get to say it at the end of the other one because it disappeared into the vacuum of space. I am Mark Sudduth. I'll be back next week, HurricaneTrack.com. Talk to you next Monday.